Feel refreshed after that rough day yesterday?
Well, if I were working, never tires me out, but standing around just wears me too.
That, to a frazzle, huh?
I'm so unused to it. You know, in television, the name of the game is do it as good as you can. Yeah.
Okay, we're rolling anytime you're ready.
Gary, Star Wars is setting records all over the country. And I wonder, was this something that you anticipated? Of course you wanted to hit, and I'm sure you thought you had one, but this kind of success?
No, we didn't anticipate this at all, especially the immediate response. We felt that it would take a few weeks for word of mouth from those who did like it to build up and to build an audience for it. It really is amazing.
How are these grosses comparing with other blockbuster films that we know about?
Well, I guess they compare very favorably with the other big hit, Jaws, that came out in the same type of picture that was more or less an instant hit. Although it is hard to tell because their releasing pattern was slightly different. But on a theater-by-theater basis, it's doing phenomenal business. I really find it difficult to believe yet.
First week grosses, like, what are some examples of them?
Well, each city is a little different, but in San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York and Boston, we set house records for the first week, which is pretty amazing. In some cities, like in San Francisco, a city record, not only the theater itself, but any theater in the city. And it's really surprising that that large an audience was there instantly waiting. We had some inkling of the fact that there was a sort of a hardcore group that were anxious to see the picture based on letters that were sent in from seeing the teaser trailer or reading the novel or seeing the comic book or just hearing about the picture. But I had no idea it was this large.
What are we talking about in terms of dollars? What kinds of first week grosses?
Oh, I think that the total in the 44 theaters, we were about almost $3 million, which for the first week, which is not necessarily a record because we only had 44 theaters. A lot of other films have opened up in a lot more theaters. But the per theater amount is very, very high if you divide the total into the amount.
Do you foresee that it will catch up with Jaws?
Well, that's something you can never tell. It would have to do very well for a long, long time to catch up with Jaws. And there's no way you can speculate on that for sure, because it really depends on how many times people want to see the picture and how many other people who don't normally go to the movies will come out and see it.
So most assuredly now we will see Son of or Part 2 or whatever of Star Wars.
We're working on another story. I don't like to call it a sequel. I think another adventure with the same characters is probably a better term.
Further adventures of, yes. What will it be called? Will Star Wars be used in the title, or what?
We're not sure yet. I don't think so. I think it'll just be another title completely, because I don't like sequels per se. I think that if a second film using the same people can stand on its own as a movie, fine. But I don't like to sort of trade on the popularity of the first one completely.
In this film, you have used 3 comparative unknowns. Was there ever a time when the project was in the planning stages when you thought of using name stars?
No, the parts aren't written for name stars, and I think names would detract a little from the characters as presented. The nice thing about using fresh faces is that the audience has no preconceived idea of what they're like as an actor, and they associate them directly with the character they play in the movie, and it appears more believable. Not always. Some movies are written specifically for movie stars and work best with movie stars. I think The Sting was a movie like that. It works really well with stars because it's such a complicated plot that they don't have time to bring you the nuances of characterization, and the audience brings that to them because they know what Newman and Redford are like.
But in the early planning stages, were you just out looking at various ones, or how did you settle on these 3 people?
We had an open call situation where we told all the agencies in town that we were looking for people in this age group, 16 to 25 or 30, and they sent in everybody who was available, and we interviewed everyone. George Lucas, the director, sat and interviewed every single person, and then called back the ones that he liked to do readings, and then those were further pared down to ones we did videotape screen tests with, and then I sat and looked at all those screen tests and discussed the characters and the interrelationship between the 3 parts, and finally settled on these 3.
Carrie Fisher, for instance, because she is a different kind of princess. You know, you say the word princess and little things flash in your mind. She's an entirely different look for a princess. What were you looking for? What was George Lucas looking for that he found in Carrie that he didn't find in other women?
Well, we had a lot of other girls that came in that were very, very pretty, sort of the Vogue cover look type of beauty. But what we wanted was her personality to be one that she was young enough to be vulnerable in a lot of ways, but had enough strength of character to obviously have been in charge of everything all her life, as royalty has a tendency to be. So it's a combination of a lot of toughness and strength, coupled with the fact that she is a very young girl and still not completely assimilated into society, or not completely adept at dealing with her own strengths.
Gary, was there ever a time during the pre-production and post-production when you just sort of gritted your teeth and said, it's a lot of money at stake and I wonder if we're going to make it?
Oh yes, several times we felt that way. On a big picture like this, you feel sometimes that the picture is running you rather than you're running the picture. Or it's like a train already started out of the station and there's not much you can do to stop it. So you have to sort of go along with the way it's going. There were a lot of times when we would have liked to sort of stopped and regrouped. That happens on any picture, but the bigger the picture, the more complicated it is. But you can't do that, so you just have to sort of go along and do the best you can.
But you're sleeping very well these nights, aren't you?
Well, not quite yet. I haven't had a chance to rest yet. But by next week, things should have settled down a little.
Gary, thank you for talking with us here today. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
And this is Bobbie Wygant at 20th Century Fox Studios in Hollywood. Can I get just one cutaway of me just listening?
Sure.
Okay.